Thank you. I live now up in Mount Shasta. I still teach in Saratoga, though. So a little bit of a background. I don't know, how many of you have actually seen my television show? Okay, so it is on PBS. It's actually on the Create Network, and it's also on KVIE, which is your local PBS station. That is our mother station that actually hosts us, so we're actually here locally. But I have a big following also on YouTube, and my YouTube videos are lecture videos, and they're awesome. So if you put my name onto YouTube, not only will you see the television shows, but there are like 150 other videos there that are very similar to the discussions that we are having here tonight. I was asked here to actually be a judge for your show here, and of course I'm always honored when people do that. Sometimes it's kind of a little nerve-wracking to come back into the environment after you've given out the ribbons. But I said, no, I'll face them. So partially what we're going to do, I've been notified, we're going to actually go through the show. And I'm going to give you a little bit of background about why I chose things. And in the process, I'm going to give you some of my philosophies about painting. When I critique paintings, I don't necessarily dwell on that painting. If you've seen my YouTube videos, you would notice that normally what I do is I ask people, so what were you thinking? And then I judge the painting on whether or not you were successful with that. And so if I look at it and go, oh well, I think you should have put more blue here and do a little bit more abstract there, it's like me jumping into your painting telling you what to do. And so when I judge things, and we had a little conversation about abstract art, and we'll go into that a little bit, I'm sure that they'll pop up. I asked the artist, so what were you thinking? And that's kind of like my shtick, how you always have that little saying, so I go, what are you thinking? And then I just wait to hear what the artist has to say. And I judge the painting whether or not that was successful or not. And so I might be looking at something saying, oh, it needed more blue, more purple. And the artist will come back and say, no, I actually was trying to dwell into some kind of melancholy feeling of some kind that, color would have been distracting. And so it's kind of like I have to excuse myself because I'm stepping all over their painting. So I've been notified there are 6 of you that actually have paintings in the show that are here today. So we're going to go through we're not going to turn them on now, just relax. There's some good stuff before that. So I'm going to go and ask, when these paintings pop up, I'm going to ask whether or not anybody here did them, and then I'll have a dialogue with those people. The other times I'm going to be talking about some of the paintings that I've chosen. I'm going to be out of here by 9 o'clock because I have to drive back to Mount Shasta. That's where I live now. And tomorrow morning I have to teach up in Medford. So this is and I was teaching all day today in Reading. So I teach in Medford, Reading, Mount Shasta, and San Jose. So twice a week I go down to San Jose. All of my classes are booked. And they're booked primarily because of my discussions and talks, and some of you will get an experience of what that's like. I give workshops up in Mount Shasta, 3-day painting workshops. I've been teaching for 40 years. And a lot of people look at me and go, but you're not that old.
Right.
Yes, I am. I just was fortunate not to turn gray yet. But I'll catch up. But no, I actually started teaching when I was 14. And I had classes. In fact, Calvin was in high school with me. And he can vouch, yes, he actually gave classes when he was 14. And so I had women in my classes that were 3 times, 4 times my age. And a lot of them were uncoachable because of that dynamics. But I learned very early on what was the key to painting. What really is the key to painting. And it's actually quite simple if you understand the philosophy, the key to painting. And I learned that early, and I started teaching that early. And in the process of coaching and teaching and coaching and teaching, I have to refine that down to a very simple method. And my students are very, very successful. In fact, they're so successful that I actually on Saturdays give worldwide coaching classes over the phone. But I have people from all over the world that are from very beginners to professionals that just need to have another insight to their painting to get to the next level. So it might be something you might want to consider since I'm not here in the area. We as artists pretty much want to paint for ourselves. And I know when I was asked to do this show, there were some of you that were a little nervous about the fact that I'm like more of a realist painter. And there were quite a few that do abstract painting. And in the process of putting together the show here, I had like almost 300 slides.
376.
How much?
376.
376.
Wow.
And so I constantly got this phone call going, so where are they? Where are they? I'm like, I'm going through them. I had no idea. So I was supposed to eliminate. And you know, going through the show, there are certain things that I look for in my work. And if you look at artists who judge shows, they all have their likes and don't likes. So like a lot of artists will, if they're into watercolors, you'll see all the watercolors pop up. You know, and if you're an oil painter, forget it. If you're an abstract painter and the artist doesn't do abstract, forget it. My belief that, as part of being an artist in this community right now, is that I pretty much gauge the show by what actually shows up. And then I look for a cross-section of work. So in putting the show together, I looked at everything and I said, okay, out of the work that came, is there a selective amount of abstracts, watercolors, oils, sculptures? And I went down and just literally tried to wean it down like that. And so then I sent them into you and you go, oh no, you're like 170, we have to get down to 90. I was like, oh no. So then I had to carve and carve and carve, and believe me, some of the ones were just, I was like, well, just trying to figure out which ones I was going to take out of that group. And then I wasn't really counting, and then I sent it in again, she goes, oh no, you're still 37 too many. I was like, oh my God. So anyway, but then you decided that was enough, right? You said you could actually like...
We got down to 121.
Yeah, 121. So if you didn't make it into the show, don't feel bad that there's any problem with your work. And some of the conversations we have today will hopefully explain why. But if I also felt like there was work that I had already chosen that represented that particular genre, you may have been just cut out for that, not because yours didn't have the quality. So don't feel bad about that. And shows, they're all over. Just find another judge that will judge your work, and I'm sure that you'll get some blue ribbons. So the main thing that I'm looking for in painting in general is something that communicates to me. So what is art? What is art? Anybody want to take a stab at that? Are we like amongst artists?
A creative spirit talking to another individual's creative spirit.
A creative spirit talking to other individuals. Anyone else want to take a stab at it? Yeah?
We have an urge to decorate our environment.
An urge to decorate. There are a lot of artists that would be really upset if you said, well, your work looked like decoration.
Expression of a personality.
It's self-expression. That's one of the components. What else? Yeah.
Art is what you think it should be.
Art is what you think it should be. Yeah, no, that actually works.
Yeah.
You know, it is what it should be. But anyone else have a throwing something into the pile here? You're all painters. Why do we do this? Why does it have value?
You just have to do it.
It occupies our time.
It occupies the time. It's better than drinking at the bar every night. Although if you become an artist, you actually end up being a drunkard at the bar. Yeah.
It stimulates your soul.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. But you were actually more right in your conversation. Art is communication. It's communicating. It has only that value. And when people think about the arts, every one of the arts is about entertaining the viewer. And we have gotten lost over the years because we've kind of gone into this realm of self-expression, that art's about me, it's about feeling good, it's about, all this stuff. But the reality is that it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the viewer. And I learned at an age of 14 that was the key, because I was in Hawaii and I was walking around in galleries and they had all these things, and I was 12 or 13 at the time. And I wasn't really a good artist back then. In fact, the only reason why I was there is because my mom said, hey, do you want to go with the art class to Hawaii by yourself? And I was like, 12? Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, that would be cool. So, but my main focus at the time was I wanted to be a bowler. That was my passion. In fact, that was my identity. In fact, in Lake Tahoe, where I was the captain of the bowling team, and my average was 230. And I was bowling 300 games consistently. So I was really, really good. And my mother, who was German, said, I am not going to have a bowler as a son. You're going to take over the family business. I'm putting you into art classes. So reluctantly, my art classes were on the same day as my bowling classes.
Oh, no.
So she forced me into that so that I would take over my family's cake decorating business. But that backfired on her too. So here I am in Hawaii. My mom's forcing this art thing on me. And I'm going, no! And I'm walking around these galleries. And it was the first time growing up in Lake Tahoe that I actually got to see really fine art. And I came around a corner and there was a painting by an artist by the name of James Featheroff. Now mind you, I'm like 12. And I stood in front of that painting and it transformed me. And I said, I want to be able to deliver that feeling I got from that painting to other people. I wanted not the ability to paint that for myself, but if I had the power to be able to transform other people's lives through my work, like this painting has just done, that's incredible. That's incredible. So I immediately, from one painting, it changed my life. And I don't know, if any of you have ever created work where you have stimulated somebody to the point of tears. I mean, when your work speaks to other people, that's when you really have created art. And so little of that actually happens because we're kind of caught up in self-expression. We think it's all for ourselves. The issue with self-expression is that it's very limited and it's very lonely. And this is one of the problems I have with abstract art. When you are creating art that does not communicate to a viewer, it's like making dinner for yourself. Now there are times when you sit and you make dinner for yourself and you go, oh my God, this is incredible. I should open up a restaurant. Of course, nobody hears you say that because there's nobody there. But what is it like to create a dinner, Thanksgiving dinner or something, and people go, oh my God, I can never think of Thanksgiving again without thinking about tonight. It transforms you. It makes you want to do another dinner. It calls you to become a better artist. So the whole key is to try to communicate. Now all of the arts require that. All of the arts. So if we look at filmmaking, you have Steven Spielberg. His goal is not to make a really cool movie. If he's thinking about what he can do, that's limited. But what Steven Spielberg does is that he tries to reach out to the members in the audience and make them laugh. And when you're at the height of laughter, he tries to make you cry. So when you see E.T. coming out of the closet with all of those clothes, and everybody's giggling and he's going, ee. And then all of a sudden he turns and he points to the window and he says, E.T., go home. You go from high to low in a second. And your body changes. That's what art is. It's about communicating to other people. And doing work that actually does that. So when I'm looking at paintings in a show like this, that's my main key. Does it actually speak to me? Does it move me? I don't really care if it's a good composition. I don't care if it's a good color balance. I don't care if it's abstract. But it's got to have some kind of meaning to it. Now we were talking about abstract art that is objective. Is it?
Non-objective.
Non-objective, yeah. So that's where you're actually telling the viewer, turn off your brain. Is that possible? Do we sit on the edge of a cliff looking at clouds, not thinking, wow, that looks like an eagle. Wow, that looks like a big teddy bear. The brain, you can't shut the brain. And just like Spielberg or somebody who writes music is communicating to the viewer, that's what you have to do with your work. You have to communicate to them. You have to get that. Nobody can objectively look at something and not think of anything. And abstract art as a whole is kind of losing its favor and is being pulled back into more representational art. I don't know if you've noticed that. But no longer do you see all the New York magazines with all of that slash and gash kind of paintings anymore. You're actually seeing people with quality, and that's because when Russia and China opened up again and came over to the United States to take lessons in the colleges, these guys were masters. And the colleges here said, oh my God, not even the teachers could paint this well. You know? So they had to kind of gear up. So when I went to the Academy of Art in 1980, I actually got thrown out of it, but it was crazy. I spent a whole semester doing broccoli and big sheets of paper. I'm going, what is this good for? And they go, shut up, it's good for you, it's modern art. And I'm like going, no. And I got out of Stanford and I was like going, what do I do with this? You know, especially since coming from Lake Tahoe, it's like, what do I do with this? I mean, I was kind of a traditionalist. I grew up in Lake Tahoe. I loved landscapes. That was my background. So I went into more realistic painting, but it took me a while to do that, and nobody was teaching that. Now we're fortunate we have YouTube. You can watch me there. You might even see this on YouTube. Who knows? But the thing is, now you're seeing what other people are doing, and really the craft of painting is now key. The quality of painting, how you actually create something, and better yet, how you actually tell a story. And no painting should ever be even started without having a concept. You've got to have a concept. What is it? You have to know how the brain reacts to things. You know, when authors write music, when musicians compose music, when authors write plays, they have formulas. And they start off thinking, what is the story about? And they do an armature. And they almost have a system. By page 10, something needs to happen, otherwise you'll lose your viewer. Page 50, somebody dies. Page 90, something else happens. And then, you know, it leads you through. But there's an armature, and they build that, and then they build out from that. But they have a concept of where this is going. If they're going to write a spy novel, they know it's going to be a spy novel. That halfway through, they don't turn it into a Jurassic Park all of a sudden. You know, if it's a love story, it's a love story all the way through. So they have a concept. A lot of you don't even have a concept before you start. And the concept shouldn't be about what you want to do. The concept has got to start off as, what do I want the viewer to feel when they see my work? One of the keys that I do with my students is I have them visualize, okay, you're walking up to a room where there's a ton of people outside and the doors are closed. And so at 7 o'clock, you go up, they open up the doors, and it's a big showroom, like a big gallery in a museum. And you walk into that space, and all of a sudden you realize all the work there is yours. And I say, can you visualize what's looking back at you? Can you visualize a room full of your work and how people are going to be moved? The Grandview, which is our television show, the main mission statement is called, it's touch, move, and inspire millions of people. And that's been my mission statement since I was a little kid. The whole idea of having the Grandview was that I was going to touch, move, inspire. And so in the process of doing that, I said, well, okay, millions of people. I'm going to touch, move, and inspire millions of people. Then all of a sudden you go, well, how am I going to do that? And I thought, well, that guy on TV with the big hair looks like he's happy. So we were painting outdoors, and I said, hey, let's do a television show that goes to the national parks and paints outdoors. I mean, that sounds like it's pretty cool. And I have some videotapes here. If you guys are nice, I'll hand some out. So anyway, so first you have to come up with a concept, and then you have to learn how the brain works. You know, we have this brain up here, and it wants to make sense. And you here are a product of evolution. Millions of years have brought you here. And you guys are so fortunate because your ancestors were the smart ones. Your ancestors were the ones that learned how to run away from animals. They learned how to see light so that they can go hunting. They learned all these things, and you're a product of that. And to sit and say that all of that genetics in your body and tell them, oh, well, just don't look at it like it's anything, it's abstract. It's like, are you kidding me? No, you've got to have something for the viewer to hold on to. And when you do that, you've got to realize that the brain works a certain way. It's attracted to certain things. So every painting's got to have a central focal point. One thing. So many of you artists have way too many things for the viewer to look at. It's like listening to 3 radio stations at the same time. Nobody can tell. So your central focal point needs to be key in the painting, and it needs to be an area of light or some kind of effect. It can't be a thing. Because in this world, we don't like things. In fact, some of you have gotten to the point where you tell your kids, don't buy me anything for Christmas. I've got enough things, let's go to dinner. Okay? So we don't want paintings of things, and a lot of you are thing painters. You start off saying, wow, I want to paint a bird. I'm going to go through my calendars and then I reproduce it. But that's not what makes great art. What makes great art is that moment in time when ordinary things become extraordinary. When a thing becomes more important than everything that you're looking at. So like you drive through Sacramento here, and I'm sure that there are a lot of you at every certain time you go, oh my God, this is so ugly down here. It's just, ugh. Midday, summer, it's 95 degrees, and you're going, what the hell am I doing in Sacramento? And then all of a sudden fall comes, and you're driving, and it's right before sunset, and the light's coming through the golden trees and everything, and you're going, oh my God, it's so beautiful here. Nothing changed except the lighting effect. So lighting is key. That's our instrument. That's what we use to create a good painting, is the effect of light. And it could be on anything. So you could just paint a cup, and if the lighting is gorgeous on it, it becomes extraordinary. So once you get that, then composition flows. How do you get the viewer around? How do you balance everything out? So it's an interesting game. And we don't have enough time to really go through that, because I know some of you actually like to look at slides. But those are kind of the things that I look for. And so like if I do my workshops, those are the things that I have my students do. That's the reason why I have my full classes. And I have extraordinary students. And all they do is that they've learned how light works, how shadows work, what's their story, what's their concept. It transforms the paintings immediately. So we're going to go ahead and, I guess, we'll turn off the lights. And we're going to go through these. They're not in any order, apparently. And I'm going to, I might skip through several of them because I want to get to some of the paintings that are actually done. I admire, and a lot of people admire, is the brushwork or the effective brushwork or the painting aspect of it. Now this is a little tiny painting. The thing is, if you go into that gallery, you'll notice that it pops right off the wall. And it does because of the contrasts that are involved. Not only that, psychologically, we have kinship with with animals. And so there's a real bizarre feeling that we have for skulls and things. In fact, even when elephants come across skulls and skeletons, there's a subliminal feeling to them. And this is kind of part of those points that I'm telling you that you kind of have to need to know if you want to turn your viewers on. Second, when you're actually painting animals and figures, the thing that we look at are eyes, or the lack of in this particular instance. Gives us an actual feeling or a remorse. If you notice the little highlight that's above the eye up there, that gives us a nice central focal point there. I would probably have suggested to take, you see the highlight on the bottom corner left, the front of the mouth there? I probably would have toned that down. Now when we actually look at paintings, again, this is how you know how the mind works, is that when we look at paintings, we actually go from left to right. And that's because that's how we read. And so if you're doing a painting, it's a good idea to have your main central focal point on the right side of the canvas. It's not always, but it's good to know that. Now, you know, in other cultures, they read backwards. And in China, they read upside, up and down, right? How's most of their artworks created? They're on scrolls. Can you see how that fits in? So all of our lives, we've always gone left to right. If you study advertising back in the day, no longer, you can see where this is a fail. And I guarantee you tomorrow you're going to drive through the town looking at billboards completely different. In advertising, the right side of the page is more expensive than the left side. If you are going to compare two products, old school advertising, the product you want to sell is on the right side. It's the dominant side. In fact, if you open up your newspaper, you'll see most of your ads are on the right side. When we read a magazine, we usually read it backwards, and we usually are looking at what side of the page. Now, I've done advertising in Plein Air magazine. They're actually one of our sponsors for our television show. And I had requested, I said, I will only put an ad if you give me the upper right-hand corner. And she said, it's funny, nobody ever really makes that kind of request. But when you think about it, it makes sense. In fact, remember Jay Leno? Some of you are old enough to know that. He was on the left-hand side of the stage, and his guitar player was on the right. And whenever he would make reference to the guitar player, he was actually more funny at times, and sometimes his giggling and antics actually would take over the whole show. David Letterman was opposite, and David Letterman had a command of the stage. And his sidekick was just that, a sidekick that he would step on and kind of mutilate all the time, kind of laugh at. And it's just the placement, it's subconscious. But isn't it good to know that? If you're going to have light coming into your painting, and your main dominant side is over here, you want to make sure that the light comes from opposite direction, because the light coming into the painting goes the longest distance. And the central focal point should be no larger than the size of a silver dollar. And why is that? Because that's all we can see. When you look at somebody, really look at them, you're not seeing them. In fact, some of you actually feel this. Have you ever looked at somebody, tried to have a conversation with somebody, and they have a lazy eye? And you sit there and go, which one am I supposed to look at? That's your depth of field. That's as big of an area that you see is about the size of an eye. And so, you know, a lot of people say, well, I want to loosen up my paintings. I'm not sure what edges I should soften. Well, just think about how you see things. If you stare at something That one spot is in focus. The rest of it is not. And as you get further away from that object, it gets blurrier. Now the difference between photography and painting is that photography doesn't have a brain. And so what happens is that a camera will just have no opinion about anything, but you do. You can't look at anything without having an opinion. So when you're looking at somebody with a lazy eye, your brain's trying to figure out what am I trying to look at. That's the conversation that the brain goes into because it wants to focus on something to keep that focus. Then everything away from that spot goes into some softening, blurry, all that. If you bring a real strong line and a strong highlight down below, it pulls the viewer down. Now, you can have secondary and third highlights, which actually we have in the center of the skull there, and then we have in the front of the mouth. Those needed to be toned down a little bit so that the highlight over the eye, which is where we would drift to, especially with all the eye magnets, the lines leading up to the eye, that's where you'd want to have the main key highlight. Well, there's a lot of paintings that are done by gosh, by golly. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like you look at something and go, I like that. I mean, the thing that I get from this painting, what I loved about the fact that you said you think about the family going to it, and I thought it was very interesting because you chose a family from behind. And so, in a way, we actually become a participant in this as if we were part of the group. And that's actually what makes the painting very successful. The issue is, though, is where's your central focal point? So, like where the arch is, you would say that's your center focal point, and why is that?
Well, it's on the right side.
Some of you, yeah, it's on the right side. Good. Some of you are thinking, thank God I don't have a painting in the show. Huh?
I wish I did.
You wish you did. You didn't. I didn't get your envelope with cash.
No, I
in it.
didn't.
Okay. No, but the issue is that there is no central focal point because you didn't choose one. And when I do this with students, I go, so what's your central focal point? I mean, they have learned that if they haven't figured it out, they'll figure it out at that moment. And so you do not start a painting without a central focal point. Like really nail it. So like if you say, I want that entryway, those columns there, to be my central focal point, then you nail that and you ask yourself, what is it about that? How can I work light on that? How can I bring the viewer to that? And it's always light. If you have a dark area, one little area of light comes into that space, you see it. Because of the millions of years of people that lived in caves, if you couldn't see light when you woke up in the morning, you walked the other direction and you died in the cave. People who survived walked out towards the light. And so the first thing you have to do is sit and have a concept and say, where's my central focal point? And if you don't have one in your picture, choose one. And then realize that's the only spot of the whole painting that has to have detail. That's the only spot. Because if you're looking at that, you're not going to see anything else. So if you want your paintings to look a little looser, here's the key. If you want to know what lines should be softened and what shouldn't, here's the key. It's because that's the way the brain works. So you would choose that first. And then the rest of the building would have to go down in value, go down in temperature. Okay? And all of those windows and everything have to be blurred. Because that's not how we see, that's how a camera sees. Now we think we see everything, but our eyes are doing this. And as I'm looking across at you, my brain isn't doing anything. Okay? But then all of a sudden I look at him. I don't know why, but I just chose you.
Because I'm nodding my head.
Yeah, you're doing movement, and that's central focal point. Yeah, if you put animals or people into a subject matter, the movement catches our eye. So you're doing this, I see you. Once I see you, I form an opinion. You don't want to know what that is, but I have an opinion.
No, I'd like to know.
I go, you're the bobber in the room.
The what?
Okay? The bobber, the bob in your head. Are you Bob? No. Okay. So, but my attention, now I'm forming an opinion about you. As I'm forming an opinion about you, all of you are gone. Okay? And you're here. So if I were to paint this, I would paint you, and predominantly I would go into your eyes. Because the first thing we do with people is we look into their eyes. So that's the key of having a central focal point. And I know a lot of you have taken classes before and they talk about it, but probably not to the refined way that I actually teach it. Is this yours too?
Yes.
Okay, where's your central focal point? Wait. What were you thinking?
It's a Victorian in Sacramento. I just like to know.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's your central focal point? The building's a thing. See, there's no effects. When there's no effects, you lose the viewer. It's like looking at San Jose midday. Keep driving. You gotta stop them. I said San Jose, I didn't say Sacramento. But you gotta stop them. You know, fall here is gorgeous with all the lighting effects and stuff. You gotta give them that. Don't focus on, the building is arbitrary. You could put a cup in there, it wouldn't make any difference. It's just a thing for light to happen. You know, I think of your paintings as a stage. Think about a stage, and in a stage, you've got the cast and all of the sets, and all of that is subdued. And then all of a sudden the music rises up and some lady walks out with sparkles on and is in a spotlight. And at that moment, you're not aware of anything except her. Your full attention's on that. And if you want paintings that will be in a gallery like this, and you want people to come into a gallery and walk across the gallery to go see your work and bypass everything else, these are things you need to know. You want to win all of your competitions? Paint effects, not things. Things are just something effects happen to. You do that, it will transform your world. Now, you guys don't need to take notes on this, because if you go to YouTube, it's explained over and over and over again. And if this turns out, this will be on YouTube too with it. And I just felt that this kind of missed a little bit of that. When you don't have a central focal point, it kind of ends up looking like wallpaper. You're all over the place. And just like with music, just like with storytelling, you have to lead the viewer to something. You have to make them turn the page. The 1812 Overture, why do we listen to all that? So that we can listen to the last 30 seconds when the cannons go. Because we know it's coming. You know, and when we're actually creating paintings, like you want to take the plein air students outdoors, there's three kinds of paintings. One, you do a plein air painting. Second, you do a study. And three, you do a sketch. And usually a sketch can turn into a painting. But a study stands by itself. And a sketch can stand by itself. You can choose, well, I just leave it. But to actually form a painting of something, it has to have a foreground, middle ground, background. It has to have good eye magnets. It has to have a central focal point. It has to have structure. So when you look at those paintings in the museums from the old masters, all of these key points are noted. So what were you thinking?
Have you ever driven across Texas?
See, this is the kind of painting that makes you want to ask, so what were you thinking? So,
It's just, you know, thinking about endless distance and looking for something that is interesting, you know, a momentary point of interest beside the road. Also, you know, just having a nice place to stop, to rest on that journey.
how many of you get that?
I'm sorry?
I said, how many of you get what he just said? Raise your hands.
I get a
You've
little more.
obviously never driven across Texas.
Now, don't do that. In my classes, you would have had to pay $20 for that. But I want you to notice, when you talked about that, everybody was in agreement.
Well,
With what you were doing.
I think there's even more you can read into it than that. I mean, just study it for a while. You got all kinds of stuff going on. I mean, you got an empty chair. What is that? It's kind of loneliness. It's abandonment.
They're in Texas. Nobody wants to stick around to sit in the chair.
Hey, even the cows want to get out.
They're gone.
ultimately, the thing is what I really love about this painting is the effect. That shadow of the chair on the road is brilliant. The shadow by itself, I mean, the chair by itself probably would not have worked, but having that shadow and having the light hit that and cause that, that's an effect. And when that happens, it's more interesting. When I tell students to set up a still life, I go, okay, get everything you want to put into the still life and then throw light on it. And then move everything around till something happens that you go, oh, that's more interesting than the thing itself. You know, so I have students in my classes, they'll do a water bottle, you know, smashed water bottle. And they sit there and they'll move it around. Now, the last thing I want to see is a smashed water bottle. I want to see something that's so extraordinary that I don't care it's a water bottle. It just happens to be a thing. So if you shine light through these things happen that are really cool, like the way that the light hits things, the cast shadows that it causes, the light going through. Those effects are far more interesting than a water bottle. And my students go, why you want to, nobody wants to paint that. And I go, try it. But make some effect. And when they come back, they go, that was extraordinary. And your idea with this was really extraordinary. I love the concept, but ultimately it's that shadow that pulls it together, says, yeah, you know what you're doing. You know, so it's... Anybody here for that?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, so what were you thinking?
Well, there were actually originally 5 of us, and we would drive all over California to be together twice a year and just hang out, you know. So, 2 of them were gone, so there's only 3 left.
And what's the title of the painting?
Friends. It's friends. So that's what we are, we're friends. And actually, when we spend time together, we always get to know each other a little bit more than we did before. So I think that's part of what I was doing in the painting, was just showing there are different parts to us. I mean, we're just not flat people, but just kind of trying to put the relationship in there as well, I guess.
I got that.
So
I got that. That's why it's in the show.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. How many of you actually got that story while she was telling it? Yeah. That's the level of bar I like to see in abstract art. How do I know that an abstract art is good? Being a human being, trying to make unsense out of things that are senseless, is that it has to communicate to us. We're all humans, we're exactly all the same. When you talk about your friends, and the last 3 out of 5 of your friends, and this is a grouping of them, that all hits us like this, because we can relate to that. See, you had us at that. So sometimes the title. But the way I gauge abstract or anything else is that I'll look at something like this, and let's just think it's something else. And I look at it and I go, God, I feel something. I don't know what it is, but it speaks to me. It's like the Moonlight Sonata. You know, when you listen to the Moonlight Sonata, it doesn't matter who or where you hear it, you automatically go, oh, that's the Moonlight Sonata. You know? There's something about that makes that better than almost any other song ever written. It pulls you into it, you know? Because the Moonlight Sonata is written by a man who wanted to love. Beethoven, as magnificent as he was as a composer, was very ugly and very unliked. He even made up girlfriends, but never had one. And so the Moonlight Sonata almost has this yearning of being alone. And we key into that. We don't know what it is, but it feels, we touched by it, just like your story does. But if I look at a painting like this and I go, God, I feel something. And then I walk up to the title and it says, love. And I sit back and go, yeah, that's exactly what I was feeling. In its abstractness, there might be not a thing in there that is a red heart or anything else, but the way that it was done, the artist was totally in tune with what the feeling of love is, and we all know what that feeling is or should be. And if they can capture that so that I get it, that's powerful abstract art. Anything else is just a manipulation of color. And the thing is, what's really good about your piece is why you were even telling us the story, is that that's what we felt before you even started talking. And you just confirmed what we were actually witnessing. Through the use of your color, your design, your objects. Really good piece. So what were you thinking?
Well, the orangutan are endangered species, and the close-knitness of this family, I thought every society is made up of families, and that's the basic structure, the love and the closeness of the families, and I feel like we're becoming fragmented, and that I wanted to bring their minds back to the importance of the family unit and not get so caught up in everything and all of the stuff that's going on in the world and the hatred and all, to forget the basic need of being family and bonded to the family. And just as they are an endangered species, the family unit can be endangered also.
There's a concept. That's a concept. I mean, imagine having that to work on before you even start. I mean, how important is that? That really inspires you to work on it and to work your best on it. And if it made a difference that you could cause somebody to donate money or to go to Africa to help the animals, then even more extraordinary.
I'm part of the Humane Society too.
Give money. The thing that you have to watch out for is that the hands, the two hands at the bottom are a little bit too lit, that you don't want to bring the viewer down there, okay? The bond, the eyes, you see how the eyes of the orangutan, you just immediately go to that. The left eye is a lot brighter than the right eye because you don't ever want to have two eyes. You have to have a dominant eye. Now that gets into that whole lazy eye thing, so you did that beautiful on there. And then the closeness of the hands together is really extraordinary. And so even the highlight on the monkey on the right, on the eye, and if you look at that eye, the eye of the main monkey over there and the hands, it forms a triangle. Okay? That's what you want to create in a painting. You want to have a dominant main central focal point, and then two points that are less dominant but equal as far as importance. And so it's the main eye and then the hands and then the other eye forms the thing. And then, so anything that's not in that, like the ears, they need to be softened. The monkey in the middle needs to be softened. You want to try to keep your composition down to 3 key points, one of them being the main one. And the reason why you want to have 3 key points is because we, as human beings, can't focus on anything. So if I'm looking at you engaging in a conversation, at some point I'm going to lift my eyes and look to the right. And I need something over there to look at. But it can't be important. But naturally I'm looking at you, and I might drift and have a conversation with you, but my eyes drift off. If you notice that with people? Because otherwise I would just be talking to you like this, and this would feel really weird. So our eyes naturally dart off. And you have to give something out there for the eyes to catch. That's why you have to have 2 other focal points that catch the eye. But they can't keep the eye there. So you want to make sure that you soften most of the edges. You bring a little bit of highlight on them to give them something, but then they have to come back to the main central focal point. So now what happens is that you're starting to create movement in the painting. So rather than having 1 key focal point and having it stiff, you create 3 focal points, 1 dominant that catches the eye, and then 2, so when the eye drifts, it moves and catches something, and then ideally it will move to somewhere else, and you're starting to move the viewer throughout the painting. And if you look at the old masters, they were masters at that. It's amazing, even architecture. You have no idea how they manipulated the viewers. This is what I want you to get, it's about the viewers. If you go into a church in Europe, especially during the Baroque era, and you step in, you can just sit in the pews and watch this. People go in, and they'll come into the center, and they'll look at the main altar, and then they start doing this. They're screwing themselves to heaven. But they'll have like the main altar, They'll have the higher altar that's up usually on one of the posts. Then they'll have the choir. Then they have the organ. And then if you notice, there's lines that go all the way up. All of the figures and everything are all forced down, and it spins up, and the viewer is actually transformed to be a little bit dizzy. A good space to be when you're like trying to transform people's emotions when they come into a church. But just watch it. And all that is eye magnets. All that is intentionally working subliminally on the human brain. The Baroque artists did this exquisitely. So if you look at Caravaggio or Bernini, they're masters at getting the viewer to move. So you look at Michelangelo, yeah, he's got some movement, but not like Bernini. So what were you thinking?
Well, as a plein air artist, I like to try to capture the moment and getting the eye to go back to where that little barn is and the trees that the sunflowers being
Where's your central focal point?
back by the tree with the barn. That was my original plan, but I don't know. It might be the sunflower right here in the front.
How many of you plein air paint?
She's one of our teachers.
Okay. So the problem,
Done with a palette knife, not crushing.
the problem with plein air painting is that you're dealing with a moving object. And so Monet got it down to 7 minutes, that you can actually look at something for 7 minutes. The most important thing about plein air painting is to paint the moment that you were inspired. Most plein air painters fail because they don't have a concept. When I was filming the Grandview television show, we would go out on location on Sunday morning for our painting sequence, which we were only allowed to do in the park for so many hours. And so we had 6 hours on Sunday morning, and so we had to be out there at 6 in the morning, and we started photographing insert shots. And the reason why some of my videos are hailed as being some of the best plein air videos is because every time that I was painting, I had to paint what we saw at 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning, because that's when the effects are gorgeous. So the cameraman would say, so what are you going to paint? I go, see the light hitting those flowers? Take a picture of that. And see how the light's hitting those trees? You know, when you're in the morning, you can do that. You're like, wow, that's great. And the problem is that in a plein air painting, it's constantly moving. You're going, wow, that's great, wow, that's great. And you start painting all of that, and then you wonder why your painting looks so flat. You can only have one concept. And so what I tell students is that you got 7 minutes to paint your painting. That's it, that's all you get. You got to get your painting down to 7 minutes. In that 7 minutes, you got to put in your lights and your shadows, your idea, your concept, your eye movement, everything that caused you to stop and say, I want to paint this. And then you pick up your paint box and you turn around with your back to the scene. And you stay focused on painting what you remember. Now, Carlson's book on landscape painting, if any of you have ever read that book, it's a must. Your teacher, you recommend it to everybody. The last chapter of that book, what is it?
It's been a while.
It's on memorization. It is remembering, and it's really key to that. It's not just outdoor painting, but it's all painting together. Recreating the human experience. You can only do that if you turn inwards. And if you're busy trying to capture all of the stuff that's happening with you, the paintings become flat. That's why a lot of plein air paintings look sloppy. They have no central focal point because they had it when they started, but then all of a sudden other things look good, and they constantly change and change, and you can't do that. So if you're a plein air painter, you have to have discipline. And you have to stick with your idea, and the only way you can do that is not be influenced by the muse that is changing. It's like a siren out there going, here, look at me, and all of a sudden it's 11 o'clock and everything's ugly. So you have to turn away and come with your idea. Now, the light is on that building, so the central focal point is that. But the problem with that is that it's just one light, there's no transition. You could have taken half that building and transitioned partially into shadow or overcast and taken the highlight right there. And then I probably would have suggested put some little light on the flowers next to the building there to really get the light to go back into there. Your foreground's absolutely gorgeous. I'd like to have seen a pattern of light leading back into there. But I mean, hey, you're a teacher, you're good.
No, and I do, I lose focus, so I'm glad I'm hearing that again. I can see it easier in other people's work than I can mine.
Yeah, and so can I.
Emotionally involved.
So can I. Yeah, no, and then your ego steps in, you're going, I should do this better than everyone else. Like, You know that frustrating feeling you have that you're not good enough? Get used to it. You have it the rest of your life. Because as you get better, you reach further. And as you're reaching, you feel like crap. That's why artists drink a lot. They do drugs because that feeling is uncomfortable, but that's just part of the journey of being an artist. I thank you so much for your time.